I think it mostly comes down to our pace of innovation. Our pace of innovation is much, much faster than the big aerospace companies or the sort of country-driven systems. And this is generally true. If you look at innovation from large companies or from smaller companies are generally better at innovating than larger companies. And it has to be that way from a Darwinian standpoint, because smaller companies would just die if they didn't try innovating. Because otherwise people just keep buying the product from the big company. But I mean, and so then why is SpaceX more innovative? I think it's probably because we've got like a super engineering-driven culture. I mean, we're running kind of the Silicon Valley operating system. It's kind of hard to describe. Like, it's like, how do you describe Linux? Like Linux is more efficient than some other operating systems. We really have to get into the weeds. But you have a fairly flat hierarchy. You promote rapid communication. Sort of best ideas wins culture, as opposed to having the seniority of the person decide the solution. Which, I mean, that should never be the case in engineering. It should always be a rational basis. And I also believe that in terms of at the leadership level, I'd much rather promote someone who has strong engineering ability than so-called management ability. We do hire some MBAs. Well, I mean, it is a chicken and egg sort of situation. I mean, the reason that there's low demand for spaceflight is because it's ridiculously expensive. So somebody, at some point, somebody has to say, okay, we're going to make something that's much more affordable, and then see what applications develop. That's what has to happen. I mean, the situation in rocketry it's like if an aircraft, imagine if aircraft were single use, then how many people would fly? I mean, like the flight rate would be really low. Because you buy a 747, it's like $250 million, so maybe $300 million, and you need 2 of them for a round trip. So nobody's paying like $500 million to fly it from Boston to London. And if that were the case, there'd be like a very small number of flights for like scientific and military purposes, and people would say, wow, the market for aircraft is so tiny. People really love going by boat. It's nonsense. So if we have rockets that are reusable, we could reduce the fully reusable and can get to a decent flight rate. The potential is there to get a 2 order of magnitude reduction in the cost of space transport, which is vital for establishing a self-sustaining civilization on another planet, or even on the moon or some sort of L5 colony or whatever. But you really need to get the cost. We need a 2 order of magnitude improvement at least in the cost of transport. In fact, I mean, relative to the estimates of what it costs to do a Mars mission, a manned Mars mission, where I think like some of the lower estimates are at the $100 to $200 billion level, for a 4-person mission. We need more like a 10,000-fold reduction. Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, we're trying to advance rocket technology, and I mean, on the one hand, if we get even slightly towards the overarching goal of Mars colonization level technology, like if we just get slightly there, we certainly have a viable business in launching satellites and servicing the space station, that kind of thing, because, I mean, for like 5%, so it's not like there's still a very viable business doing Earth orbit stuff, and even if like for 5% towards that goal, we're like vastly more competitive than the other rocket companies. Because we do have a lot of people gang up against us these days. It's definitely not necessary, but you probably end up having a moon base, just because, like, why not? I mean, obviously, it'd be great to have some sort of fundamental new thing that has never existed before and pushes the boundaries of physics. That would be great. But as far as the physics that we know today, I think I actually think we've got the basic ingredients are there. Like I mean, if you do a densified Methalox rocket with on-orbit refueling, Earth orbit refueling, so you like load the spacecraft into orbit, and then you send a bunch of refueling missions to fill up the tanks, and you have the Mars colonial fleet essentially that gets built up during the time between the Earth-Mars synchronizations, which occur every 26 months, and then the fleet sort of all departs at the optimal transfer point. I think we don't need anything like we don't need any sort of thing that people don't already know about. I believe we've got the building blocks, but the mass efficiency is extremely important. So having better heat shields that are obviously are reusable.
Is radiation on humans?
Pardon me?
Radiation on humans.
Yeah, I mean, things that can mitigate the radiation effects, certainly. I mean, I think the radiation effects are generally way overblown. Because if you went to the moon, went like 2 weeks in deep space, Buzz Aldrin's still around. People have been up in the space station for like a year or more. They're okay.
Okay.
So it's I don't. I mean, if the things we can do to mitigate the radiation en route, by effective placement of the water, so let's say the water you bring there,
protection.
Put that in the direction of the sun. But I mean, I really think we've got the sort of essential ingredients. I mean, we do need an efficient propellant depot on Mars. So that's. But I mean, I think this is like there's a lot of. I mean, obviously a lot of hard work in engineering that needs to be done, but it's there. Like the pieces are there. Yeah. I mean, we have like we have rovers on Mars.
Already.
Or not already. So I think we'll see more robots on Mars, and we probably want to make sure that the propellant depot works. There'll be an automated propellant depot. And there's some questions as to what do you do for power generation on Mars? Do you have a nuclear reactor? Then you've got to carry the nuclear fuel there. And reactors are fairly heavy. Do you do some lightweight solar power system? Sort of maybe a big inflatable solar arrays or something like that. So just power generation on Mars, I think, is an interesting problem. And then just figuring out like how to get all of the bits of efficiency right for creating, say, methane and oxygen on Mars. Mars has got a CO2 atmosphere, and there's a lot of water sort of buried in the soil that you can get. So. Yeah, well, that's why I think we should really be setting the goal as the creation of a self-sustaining civilization on Mars, not simply a mission to Mars, because then we risk, it would be awesome and cool, and it would be a new high altitude record, and great pictures and stuff. But I mean, it's just not the thing that fundamentally changes the future of humanity. And this, I mean, I should sort of explain perhaps the rationale for why I think it's important to establish a self-sustaining colony on Mars, because I think some people are aware of that, but probably most people aren't. And you hear all these rebuttals like, aren't there all these problems on Earth that we need to deal with, and shouldn't we focus on that? And the answer is yes. I mean, our primary focus should be problems on Earth, but I think that there should be some small amount that's given over to the establishment of a colony on Mars and making life multiplanetary. By small amount, I mean some number less than 1% of our resources. So, it's not as important as say healthcare, but it's more important than like say cosmetics. People may have different opinions, but so I think we should have that, and because the future of humanity will fundamentally bifurcate along the lines of either single planet species or multi-planet species. And a multi-planet version of humanity, or of humanity's future, is going to last a lot longer. We will propagate civilization in the future far longer if we're a multi-planet species than if we're a single planet species. And so it's like planetary redundancy backing up the biosphere. It's we've got all of our eggs in one basket here.